happen. So today we're going to talk about understanding your public role. Your public role is found in your profile on your human design chart. And before we jump in, oh, looks like Megan just entered again. Let's see. Okay, so here we go. If you don't have a chart yet, make sure you get one at freehumandesignchart.com. We're going to just real briefly, just so everybody has the same context, talk about what is human design, where did it come from, and then what's most important for you to know about understanding your public role. We're going to actually look at the 12 profiles and how to understand them in the context of who you are here to be and what you're here to do. So let's get into it. Brief word about me. Grace Gravestock. I went through a big life transition, actually with Lynette, who's on the call. About 4 years ago, I lost my marriage, my home, my health, and I felt like my sanity. And I feel like there were other things too, all in a very short period of time. And I really did just want to check out. But thankfully, I was introduced to human design through Lynette and her partner at the time. And it changed my life, absolutely changed my life. And why? Because it helped me to see that I'm not broken. There's nothing needing to be fixed. I'm perfect the way I am. And that when I live in alignment with my design, life can be magical. So human design teaches us how to know ourselves, love ourselves, and practice self-care. And when we do that, wow, amazing things happen. So I came from corporate America. I was doing large-scale technology change implementations as a professional change manager for almost 20 years. And I worked with big companies and governments, large numbers of people. I mean, literally hundreds of thousands of people, helping them to change the way they live and work. One of my projects you can find at directgov.co.uk. It's like a one-stop shop for all your government services. So when I say that I helped people, thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people change the way they live, I mean, indirectly, that's true because I was the spokesperson for this particular project. And when coming from corporate America, and the reason why I say that was in England, and then I did most of the rest of my work in the US. But the reason I mention that is because my background was as a professional change manager. And so I wanted to really make it easy and even fun for people to make change in their lives. In this case, mostly it was at work. So when I came across all this personal change in my life, my natural response was to just apply to myself all the things that I've been sharing with my corporate clients for all these years, right? I mean, that makes perfect sense. But what I found was there was a missing component, and that component was energy. So I became a biofield energy healer. I started really trying to understand frequency and energy and all these kinds of things to figure out what is that missing piece and why wasn't I getting the results that I wanted. So this led me to start documenting my experience, and I started writing this book, 10 Things I Learned About during my sabbatical, because I decided I'm not going to call it that I got fired or laid off. I'm going to change it to I'm choosing to take a sabbatical because I'm choosing how I want to see this reality. So I started documenting it, and that book is just one of many still in process. But the point is, there's a lot that can be gleaned from that experience. And I feel very confident that we are all here right now to lead by example. And so if you're here and you're watching this, you are also called to lead by example. So today we're going to look at what your public role is in your design. And of course, there's always choice, free choice. There's no, you don't have to do anything, but you have a particular design, which makes you perfect exactly the way you are. You're designed to be and do certain things. So we're going to look at one aspect of that today. And before we jump in, just to get us all on the same page, let's talk about what is human design. Well, it is called the science of differentiation. It's also called the science of awakening. And it's an interesting combination of some ancient and modern modalities, including astrology, the I Ching, the Kabbalah, and quantum physics. And of course, the Hindu Brahmin chakra system. Most people are familiar with this. In human design, it's a little bit different. And what's really special about human design and why I love it more than even like Myers-Briggs and some of the other personality assessments, all of them are great and all of them can help you understand more about who you are. But what I like about human design is it takes it very deep and specific to you. That's the key. And that's what really fascinates me about it. So it's also called the science of awakening because there is another component to it that we don't normally hear about outside or in the corporate context. And that is where we're at spiritually. And so I'm not going to get into all that right now, but I will just say it's if you're here, then you probably resonate with it, and that's great. And you probably already know something about it. It came through a transmission with I'll say an extraterrestrial. The story is that Ra Uru Hu was on an island in Ibiza, and he had I think it was a 6-day experience with what he calls the voice. If you want to learn more about it, you can look it up on YouTube. It is a documentary called The Voice. And the bottom line of this is really a belief or an indication that we were really coded at birth. We were coded to be and do something specific, each of us. And it's not just something specific like, I'm here to be the president of the United States. It's not like that. Our purpose is much broader than that and has many components. And there's also a lot of free choice in it. But the point is, we all have an energy blueprint, which we call a human design chart or a body graph. And in that chart is the answers to so many of the questions that we all have about who we really are, why we're here, and what we're supposed to be doing on this planet, and especially during this time. So if you want more about the origins, look up that documentary. You can look up this book. This book is a little bit dense. I would say there's better books. My teacher is Karen Curry Parker, and I really like her book, Understanding Human Design. If you're looking for a starter book, that is fantastic. So let's go ahead and jump into today's topic. Today, we're going to talk about your public role. It's also called your profile in your human design chart. And just a quick check. Can everybody see the slide that says your public role?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I did a Facebook Live last night and my camera was showing the wrong screen. So it was kind of embarrassing. I didn't realize till after it was over. So I want to check that. So what we're going to look at today is the 6 lines. These 6 lines are based on the Chinese I Ching. They're kind of like archetypes or roles. And it's important to understand what they are, because this is really it's kind of like your interface in this lifetime. It's one of the interfaces in your chart that show how you're meant to interface with the world, and in this case, with the public. So we're going to talk about what those are. So get your chart out and let's look at, there's 12 profiles and they're based on these 6 lines. These lines have numbers, obviously 1 through 6, and there are 2 numbers in your profile. The first number is what we call your conscious profile, and this is your personality. It's kind of the part of you that you would understand. Oh, Rusty just came. It's the part of you that you would understand as you. And then you've got an unconscious side, and that's your second line. Your second line in your profile on your chart is what we call your unconscious side. This is the part that you've inherited energetically from your ancestors, or from energetically from your from others. It's the part of you that is being passed down generationally, and then so there's 2 parts to it. The bottom line is there's 2 parts, and that makes up what we call your profile. So you're going to have 2 numbers on your chart. They're going to be the first one is your conscious, your second one is your unconscious, and they're going to be one of these 6 numbers. Altogether, there's 12. There's 12 profiles. So if you're wondering how common is your public role or your profile, this data comes from the Jovian archive, which they've surveyed hundreds of thousands of people, probably millions by now. There's a lot of data to say how common each of the profiles are. And I think it's interesting to note, like I've done over 1,000 chart readings now, and I've only met a handful of 2 5s like me, and 3 6s. 4 1s, 5 2s, 6 3s, and 1 4s. But the other profiles are a lot more common. You see the percentages here. It's kind of just interesting to know. The other reason why that's interesting, specifically for you, is, and we're not going to get into the details of this right now, but just so you know, there is a correlation between your profile and the harmonics of other profiles. So for example, the 2 4s are, I think the book says that they have the most possible partners, like they're the most, in some ways, the most attractive to all the other profiles and the other types. And we'll get into the 4-line and why that's so appealing to everybody in just a minute. But all this to say, there is some level of compatibility and congruence between certain numbers and other numbers. Now, having said that, okay, we have Liz entering as well. So having said that, this is not, it's not really the best thing to use for like dating. I mean, a lot of people have said to me over the years, like, wouldn't it be great to create a dating app based on your human design? And my human design teacher, Karen Curry Parker, has been approached with that as well. And she says the same thing. I mean, it's interesting to know. And yes, there's certain level of congruence between certain profiles, but really, and especially as we evolve and we change, and we're in a massive transformation phase right now as we move into what I understand to be the new paradigm, we're going to continue to evolve. And so all of these things are really just a starting point. And if you were to base your whole life on trying to find a partner that's congruent with you, you know, and it has to be this number, or it has to be this type, that may or may not be what's best for your growth. And so, of course, this gets into our philosophies on what is the purpose of life, what is the purpose of relationships and all that. And everybody has freedom to believe what they want. So I'm not pushing an agenda here, but I will say that I've had many, many conversations with people who want to use this as a basis for dating or finding partners. And I'll just say that that can be very limiting. I know somebody very well who decided, she was in college, and she decided as she was meeting all these new people in her classes to just ask them their birth time, date of birth, time of birth, city of birth, and do a quick chart on them to see if they were compatible. And when they weren't in her category of compatible, she would kind of discard them and not, you know, not necessarily give them the same time and attention that she would have for the ones that she could deemed compatible. And I feel like that may have been a miss, you know, because there's so many reasons why we interact with people and so many things that we can learn from others. So to use this as the primary thing, I think would be a shame. But having said that, it is kind of interesting to notice, for instance, that I'm really drawn to 2 4s and 5 1s and 3 5s, for instance. And I'm ideally compatible as a 2 5 with either another 2 5 or 5 2 or a 5 1 or a 2 4. But that doesn't mean that I couldn't have a good relationship with anyone of a different profile. I say that just to let you know that there is something to that, but I personally don't think that it's the most important thing that you should look at. So that's my suggestion and recommendation. I noticed there's some information in the chat. Yes, Mara, the meeting is on. I'm sorry you're not hearing it. I'm not sure how to tell you. It's probably an issue with your computer. Marilyn asks, what if we don't know our time of birth? If you don't know your time of birth, there's some different things that you can do. Let's get into that question. Let's save that question for the end. We'll come back to it. So thank you for asking it. Let's jump into the profiles first. I'm just looking at the time and I want to be respectful of your time. So the 1-line is called in traditional human design, the investigator. Also called in some of the other languages, quantum language, and some of the other, there's you know, different people have understandably tried to put human design into different terms and different words that make it easier for people to understand. So what I've attempted to do here in putting these slides together is to give you a good sense for what this means if the word in parentheses, which is the one that's in most human design charts, that's referenced in traditional human design, if that doesn't necessarily resonate with you. So the 1-line is here to be an authority or a resource. And so as an investigator, this type lays the information foundation for truly the security and safety of all of us. Why and how is that? Well, they ask a lot of questions. Your 1-lines are the ones, you 1-lines are the ones that ask who, what, when, where, why, and how, by the way. And they're just constantly digging and wanting to get to the root of whatever it is. So these are the researchers, the natural resources, researchers and resources for our new paradigm societies. Why? Because they help us establish a solid foundation through research and knowledge and sharing that information. So it's almost like if we talk about the new paradigm as an energetic platform that we want to step onto, the one lines play an important role in creating a solid foundation for us to literally step onto by asking all these questions and making sure that we're really addressing all the aspects of a given topic or conversation. So they're very thorough, they're very curious, and they really need to understand before they can do anything. So if you have a one-line child, for instance, they probably drive you nuts if you're not a one-line, because they just can't stop asking these questions. But you have to, it will benefit you to understand that in order to function best with them and to relate best with them, that you will want to give them as much information and point them to other information. So you don't always have to be obviously the only source, but that is important for them to really understand something thoroughly before they can take action on it, because they're just researchers. So it's interesting to note that the one lines show up in these 4 profiles, 1-3, 1-4, 4-1, and 5-1. And what's interesting here is that their focus can be a fear of the unknown. So if you think about an investigator, what might be driving that investigation could be potentially a fear of the unknown. So to address that fear of the unknown, they're asking questions so that they can minimize the unknown for that given sphere of information that they're looking for. So when you understand the why and the role, the public role that these one lines are here to play, it makes a whole lot more sense why they're driven by certain fears and why they do the things they do. And so if you're a one line, your public role, you're designed to literally investigate things. Now, you may not have the job title of private investigator or, or researcher per se. You don't need to have a PhD, but what it means is that as you look at what you're here to be and do, it will benefit you to put yourself in roles that allow you to be digging into information, whatever kind of information it is that resonates with you. But you're really here to be a resource and to create a resource as an authority on whatever it is that you're interested in, that you can really build a solid foundation of information around. So I think, let's see, we only have one line. Abigail, you are a 1-4 manifesting generator. Is there anything that you want to share about your experience as an investigator, or any question that you have?
Well, I just think that's so funny because when I moved to Seattle, obviously I'm from Austin, the people thought I was an investigator. They thought I was a private eye. I think just because Southern people are just nice, and yes, I do. It doesn't take me long to very quick to the, so that is spot on. And I think for me, potentially as, starseed, new paradigm bringer, whatever, it's not from fear. It's truly to kind of dissect I'm an artist as well. So I'm always looking for ways to redo everything. I just, for some reason, so that's kind of the drive for me. Definitely not fear of the unknown though. Or maybe it isn't, it's unconscious, if it is. But anyway, yeah, I just thought that was really funny because I've been called an investigator.
That's perfect. Yeah, I know Rusty's at 1-3, but she stepped away. Rusty, I don't know if you can hear us. Is there anything you want to say about your understanding of yourself as an investigator?
No, the only thing it makes me think of each time I hear you say that is I've always wanted to be a private investigator. Like, it's a really deep desire. And it makes me smile because I don't think I'll ever be one. The one that walks around looking for things, that one, not the one in health insurance or anything like that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks. Yeah. So it's important to know, like I said, you don't have to have a job title of this, but putting yourself in a situation, like Rusty is very, very, very knowledgeable about certain aspects of health and well-being and being fit. And she's very knowledgeable about certain aspects, that are in her area of interest. And so she's dug very, very deep. And so whether, again, you don't have to have the job title per se of researcher or investigator, but we see that in the one lines that we know. And it's important to have better relationships with them to understand that that's where they're coming from. So I'm looking at the time and I'm realizing I probably shouldn't have comments after every single one. So hold the comments for the next other profiles until we get to the end, and then anybody who can stay late can stay a little longer, and we can talk more about it. And then people who can't can at least get the information. So let's go ahead and jump into 2 lines. 2 lines are here to be hermits, responders, and natural. So what does that mean? Well, it means that, first of all, let's talk about the hermit. The hermit is here to integrate knowledge, energy, and wisdom, and wait to be called out of the cave, if you will. And I didn't, I'm a 2 line. I didn't resonate with this when I first heard it. And because I wasn't really in alignment, I wasn't living in alignment with my design. I didn't realize that I was a hermit. And I thought that I was just an extrovert, and that my sister would joke about me. She would say, yeah, hermit, you need about as much alone time as time it takes you to brush your teeth. That's about it. Because I've always been such a strong extrovert. Well, actually not always. I actually used to be really shy when I was young. And I mentioned that, the shy, because the 2 line can be seen as shy or coy. And that is my natural state. But then when I was 11, my dad being a salesman, door-to-door salesman, got me a karaoke machine because he couldn't stand the fact that I couldn't look people in the eye when he would introduce them to me. And he really wanted me to break out of my shell. And so that pushed me into many situations where I was singing in front of strangers, and I became much more of an extrovert to please my dad. I have an open solar plexus, which makes me a people pleaser potentially, until I overcome that and learn the lesson, which I'm working on now. But all that to say, the 2 line tends to be seen as shy or coy even. And there's a lot of interesting aspects of this sexually as well. I am actually planning on doing a human design sex program. So if you're interested in that, message me privately or in the group chat, and I'll send you information. I'm thinking about doing a group pilot on that as well in late January. I've just had so many people say they're interested in it, and it's something I've been interested in myself and studying, and it's related to my purpose here. So anyway, if you're interested, let me know. But the point that I'm making is that the 2 line, that shyness or that hermit, plays out in so many ways, and it can play out in the bedroom, in the courtroom, or in the boardroom. It can play out anywhere. So they could be shy. They might not be. Like, I'm not, most people don't think of me as shy, but I'm really quiet. Actually, most of the time I'm really quiet, like a hermit, and I'm in a group and I'm really quiet until somebody asks me a question and calls me out. And that's what the second part of your profile does. So the first part is what you're mostly here to do and be most of the time, like in your natural state. And then the second line is the action that kind of pulls you out of that. So in my case, I'm a 2-5, so I'm mostly a hermit unless somebody asks me a question about things that I'm really interested in. Usually they're heretical things, they're out of the box things. We'll get to the 5 line in a minute, but just so that you understand there's a relationship between those 2 numbers. So just to finish the thought on the 2, we are designed to be called out, but only to share our gifted way of thinking in response if we're a generator type. So remember that if as a generator type, which 70% of us are, we are meant to wait for something to respond to. So what I've had to learn the hard way is, even though I'm an extrovert most of the time, I can be, I'm not meant to share all the stuff that I have unless somebody asks me. This happened to me a lot when I was first into human design. I just wanted to share human design with everyone. And the first question I would ask is, hey, do you know what time you're born? And I wanted to do a quick chart and understand them. And what I found is that most people don't really care and they don't want to know. And in fact, they felt naked when I would look at their chart and I would say, oh, wow, you're this and this and this and this. And they'd just be like stunned silence. And it took me a while to figure out what was going on. And then I realized when I talked to my teacher, and she said, yeah, I've had that experience a lot. People are just not ready to see themselves as fully as you see them by looking at their chart. And they don't even see themselves that way. So they're not even in tune with who they really are, for the most part, maybe yet. So that was me as well. So I understand that. So we're, as 2 lines, we're hermits. We're meant to respond. So only come out of the cave when we're in response to something. And we're also considered natural. What does that mean? It means that we tend to have natural gifts that we don't necessarily see or we take for granted, but other people see them and they're like, wow, you're so amazing at this or that. And we're like, oh, this whole thing, like, oh, okay, cool. We don't even recognize it. So that's what the natural refers to in this title. So if you start getting deeper into human design, you'll see that different people have different ways of interpreting the numbers and the information, because frankly, if you've ever seen an iceberg, you've heard the term the tip of the iceberg. So what we're talking about here is just the tip of the iceberg for the meaning and of behind all of these numbers. There's so much more to learn. I've been studying my own chart for 4 years now, and I learn new things every day. And all this to say, this will give you a good sense, but just because you attend this one class doesn't mean this is all there is to learn. This is the starting point. So the 2 lines like or need alone time, I've found that I need about an hour and a half after I say goodnight to people, just to be by myself before I can actually go to sleep. So if you're a 2 line, start to track that, start to become aware of how much alone time you need, because we are all different. And so the focus for a 2 line can be aloneness. I've always had this strange fear of dying alone, like being alone, which is really not even reasonable because I have so many friends and family that absolutely adore me. But yet I have this unconscious fear of like dying alone, which is just strange. So when I read this, that the focus of a 2 line can be aloneness, and then I started digging into my Gene Keys profile, the interpretation there was this 2 line really means that you have a special gift in that alone time and you want to embrace it rather than reject it. So for me, what that meant was I've always kind of shied away from taking time to be by myself or meditation or anything like that. And I've instead tracked towards social things. And I always would choose time with someone else rather than time by myself. And that's an issue of not fully loving yourself and not fully caring for yourself as a 2 line. So be conscious and aware of that. Start to tune into how much alone time would really benefit you, and if there's a gift there for you that you've been missing all along. So you're meant to be a hermit, you need some space, and that's okay. So let people just leave you alone. You'll see the 2 lines showing up in all these profiles, the 2, 4, 2, 5, 5, 2, and 6, 2. So we'll discuss more.
Hey, Grace.
Yeah.
I have a question. So one of the things that I was wanting to get out of this, which I didn't articulate very well earlier, is that like as a 2 line, as a hermit, like how do I get out in public? Because I am shy, so how do I sell myself, or you know what I mean? Like, because like I have programs, I have things that I want to get out there to the public, but I'm a 2, and so I'm shy, and so I'm struggling with that. Like, how do I push through that? That's why I'm here today.
Okay, thank you for asking. Yeah, it's a great question. So notice that Lynette asked me a question, and now I'm responding to her, and my chart is like the chart of a teacher, and so I have a lot of knowledge, and if you ask me a question, like it pushes anyway energetically, it kind of connects my upper with my lower, and yes, I can answer that question, Lynette. So the short answer to you, Lynette, is a 2-4. Let me just see if this is going to be relevant to anyone else. Let's see, Lynette, Abigail, and Mira, you guys are all 4 lines. So well, let me answer that when I get to 4. I'm almost there. I'm going to talk about 3 first, and then I'll get to 4 in a minute, and I will answer that question. The short answer is the 2 line as the hermit gets called out by the second part. And in your case, Lynette, it's your 4 line. So we're going to talk about that and how that applies to your question in just a minute. But I've tried to give you an example for me. So I'm a hermit, and what draws me out of my cave is when people ask me questions about things that are out there, like human design or the new paradigm. What the heck is that? I love talking about that kind of stuff. And that's what calls me out of my cave. What's going to call you out of your cave, Lynette, the short answer is your network. And it's your people, all your people. You have a lot of people, and they're the ones that you're gonna be acting in response. So we'll get into that a little bit more in just a minute. Let's talk about the martyr, or the 3 line. Traditionally in human design, the 3 is called the martyr. A lot of people don't like that term martyr. It has a lot of negative connotations, but I think it's important to understand the origin of it and why it was called martyr in the first place. And it's actually pretty relevant. So the 3 lines are here to experience life in a very physical way. The 3 lines are going to be touchy-feely, not necessarily thinking of themselves as touchy-feely, but they're here to touch and feel the material world. My 3-line clients tend to be very physically oriented, either in sports, in like energy working, or in travel. Those are the most common ways that the 3-line plays out, but they're explorers. You 3 lines are here to explore life and to go where no man has gone before. And so that's why you're called the martyr in traditional human design, because the martyrs were the ones that went ahead and they did things that people were curious about, but were afraid to do on their own because they were going where no man has gone before, right? So if you think of Christopher Columbus, he was a 3-line. He was exploring the new world. Let's not get into the politics of the right or wrong of what he did, but anyway, we've all heard of him probably. So he went to explore this new land, and as a martyr, he could have easily been maligned for going so far out of the norm, you know, away from the society that he came from, to go and be this weirdo, this explorer out there. And so my 3 lines tend to feel like they're very weird, and they're very, like, they have a hard lot in life because they are drawn to things that are new and different, and they want to explore them in a very physical way, like a very tactile way. So they tend to be more kinesthetic. They tend to be more, like I said, energy workers, or into sports or yoga or whatever, something physical, because the 3 line is here to bounce around in this physical life and literally get hit, or not get hit, but, you know, like feel life in a very physical way. So a lot of the 3 lines have had a tough early first section of their life, like 0 to 30 it can be really tough for everybody, but especially for the 3 lines. Why? They literally get bounced around on the physical plane. And so if you're a 3 line, it can be challenging. You're meant to be bumping into things and people and living life, learning about life through trial and error and having a lot of different experiences, but you're here to be an expert on what works and what doesn't based on your experience. So you actually become an expert in what doesn't work, because everybody else seems to know what works, but you are particularly good at finding out what doesn't work. Why? Because you've explored it on so many levels, you know, and in so many ways that other people haven't. So you're like, yeah, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. I've tried it and it doesn't work. And so that's part of your public role, is to ideally be in a position, whether with a label or not, whether paid or not, we're not talking about that, but literally to put yourself in positions where you can explore, where you're given free reign, or you take free reign to explore and to share with others what doesn't work. So the 3 lines have never actually made a mistake, because there's no such thing as a mistake. They're here to explore. And what I wanted to say about the martyrs is, when the 3 line goes and does things like for instance, I know quite a few 3 lines that are nudists, or maybe not nudists, but they, you know, they're kind of dabbling in doing everything naked or whatever, something along those lines. And I say that because it's an example of the type of thing that a 3 line would be drawn to, because it's very physically based and it's very different, and they're exploring what is outside the norm. This is why they can be called martyrs, because people are like, what? You want to do that naked? You want to go be naked everywhere you go? Like, what the heck? You know, a lot of people are not open to that. So this is where the 3 line becomes a martyr, and they're kind of crucified for their weird beliefs or their weird desire. And all they're really trying to do is just explore. So it's not right or wrong. So we really benefit from letting go of judgment when we think about these profiles, because these are just archetypes. So the 3 line can be focused on, or kind of be driven by, a fear of failing. So they want to, because they're just driven by this, and so they're trying all these different things, and they end up finding what doesn't work. So the 3 line, we see it in these profiles. Today in this class, we have Danielle and we have Leslie and Rusty, who are all 3 lines. So if you guys can hang around a little bit at the end after we finish the other couple lines, I would love to hear your experiences of being 3 lines. Deep breath. So here we go with the 4 lines. So 4 lines are traditionally called opportunist in human design. Another way to understand the 4 line is an influencer. So the 4 lines are here primarily for their friends and family and their network. And what that means for you, Lynette, as you build your business, is that when you're looking at how to promote yourself to get more business, it's not just putting yourself out there and giving other people something to respond to, which is part of what you're meant to do as a generator type. So putting yourself out there, giving people something to respond to, which you do on Instagram all the time. And I often respond and kind of keep tabs on what you're doing because I respond to your posts and see what you're up to, which is great. That's part of it. But the other part of it, to answer your question on how you can really build your business and amp it up, is to follow what I call the 4-step manifestation process. So if you're interested in that, I'll give you the link. I'll follow up when we're done with all this and send you the link. You can go to my YouTube channel, which is it's takebackyourpower.info, or you can just Google it on YouTube and find it. It's one of the first videos that will pop up. But in short, the process is set your intention, wait for something. Well, set your intention, follow your strategy, follow your authority, and then validate it with your shoot, what's it called? In your case, it's whether it brings you satisfaction or frustration. I'm trying to think of the word there. But so it's a 4-step process, and I have a video all about it. If you're interested, put that in the chat and I will follow up and send you the link. But for you, Lynette, to build your business, you're going to put yourself out there, but you're also going to wait for something to respond to. Now, you don't have to necessarily just sit around and wait. You can also give other people something to respond to. So for instance, you said you're shy, but I know you're a fantastic speaker. I've heard you speak many times at Toastmasters and even in professional. We spoke together at ACMP, Association of Change Management Professionals. So I know you're a good speaker. So the 4 line, you can put out information that would give other people something to respond to. So you may consider exploring more videos or putting out information in a Facebook group or when you already do the Telegram group, but that may be 2-dimensional. You may need something a little bit more 3-dimensional that people can see you and hear your voice and hear the frequency of your voice. Actually, Lynette, I would tell you, the frequency of your voice is very special. And for you, it's important that you speak. And so you want to record yourself. You want to get yourself out there with more videos. Frequency is important. It's not what we're going to talk about too much today, but just for you, Lynette, we can talk later about how important that is. But I know from looking at your chart, and you may remember Ray mentioning this too, that the frequency of your voice is particularly unique, and it has to do with the hardwiring in your chart. And I think it's in the part that's, I think it's towards the bottom of your chart. I'm trying to remember that.
It's the 42 to 23. It's the channel that goes from the throat to the mind.
Okay, so that's it. Yeah, so that's a special channel. So it means that the frequency of your voice is important in attracting other people to you. I had a big aha actually the other day. I'm going to just share it here because maybe it'll be useful to the rest of you, not just Lynette. But what if, and I've been saying this for years, and Lynette knows I've been saying this, when I've been talking about the new paradigm over the last few years, I always say, in the new paradigm, we're not going to have to market and sell the way that we have in the past, using all these sleazy sales techniques and pushing people into things that they don't want to do, and manipulation and all that garbage that we've all experienced and didn't like. I've always said the words in the new paradigm, it's going to be related to the frequency, and somehow we're going to be attracted to the frequency of the other, and that is how we're going to know who to work with. So here's an example, Lynette. When you put your voice out there and you put your maybe in video or in a podcast form or some way that people can actually hear the frequency of your voice, that is what's going to draw them in. And so that would be something I would suggest that you consider. So let's just finish this off. I'm looking at the time. I want to be respectful to your time. So the 4 line is the influencer, the opportunist. You do have sort of a brotherhood, sisterhood energy. And if we talk about sex by design, the 4 lines are generally not the ones that are necessarily all about sex. I mean, it's not to say they don't enjoy sex, but they're not necessarily driven in the same way that some of the other types are. Now, I don't want to argue about that. That's not always the case. Everybody's different, but because you've got this brotherhood, sisterhood energy going on, it's just not necessarily your primary focus in life. not to say you don't like it, but it just may not be your primary focus. You may not have time for it. Lynette, you and I have had these conversations, so we know this can be true. You're the heart and service of the community because you're the first ones to share opportunities. When you get stuff that you think other people will like, you're like, hey, check this out. 4 lines are perfect for multi-level marketing, for instance, because they're naturally doing that. They're naturally here to influence their community. That is the secret. So you're here for your community. You're not here for random strangers. As a 5 line, I am actually here for random strangers, and I can be the stranger of influence that I can meet someone on a plane, totally change their life. I'll never know about it probably, and they'll never talk to me again. But something I said might have changed the course of their life through a story I tell or something. Whereas for you, Lynette, you're here to influence through your existing network, or create new networks, but you're here to influence through your network. So that's, the 4 lines can also be uncomfortable with limbo. If you look at 4 line in numerology, the 4 line is, well, it's just, think of a chair. It's very stable. And so the 4 line wants to be stable and doesn't want to have, really would prefer to have another job in place before they quit their existing job. So that's one way to look at this, uncomfortable with limbo. The 4 line can be driven by a fear of loss. They like things stable. They like things for sure. They like to know that they have a paycheck coming in or whatever it is. And so that can be a driver, not necessarily, but something to consider if you're a 4 line, to just meditate on that. So we see the 4 line in these profiles, 1, 4, 2, 4, 4, 1, and 4, 6. And that's you, Clara, and you, Abigail, and you, Lynette, you, Mira. So if you have time to stay a little bit later, in just a couple of minutes, we'll hear about your experiences. I'd love to hear about it. Quickly, we'll go through 5 and 6. So 5s are heretics, traditionally in human design called heretical or heretics. It didn't fit on the slide, so I changed it to visionary leader. Also can be here to be a messenger. So we have a mysterious and seductive energy. It can be very compelling and persuasive. People are drawn to 5 lines because we have this energy that's very attractive, and it's not necessarily sexually attractive, but it's like something about them is interesting. Why? Because they're drawn to things that are, you know, they're out of the norm. We 5 lines are interested in things out of the norm. We live in a projection field. That's important to know. And so people can see us either as a demon or savior, whatever they're projecting onto us. It doesn't necessarily need to be true, but we live in a sort of projection field. And so that makes us feel like we're not really known, like people don't truly see us for who we are. We're really here to be a general in times of trouble. There's a lot of funny stories I could share with you about that, but the 5 line is really meant to be doing their thing until somebody says, hey, I need your help. And then the 5 line checks in with their internal guidance system and either says yes or no. I found myself doing that in change management lead roles for many years. And then once I finished getting the strategy together, whatever, I'd get moved to another project or laid off or fired or whatever. And I used to take it personally. It's absolutely only because of my design. So I'm here to be a general in time of trouble, meaning I'm here to call people together, do what needs to be done. And then when I'm done with that job, they don't need me anymore. And so that has shown up as getting laid off, getting fired, getting put on a different project, whatever. It's not personal. It's just an energy. It's just an energy pattern. It's an archetype. So all that is true for all of these archetypes for you. The other thing is familiarity breeds contempt. You know, I've been a 5 line all my life, obviously, and the people that are closest to me don't necessarily resonate with the things that I share and teach, maybe because they're too familiar with me. I don't know. So we're here to have an impact, to be a catalyst for change. It's funny when I read that in the book, because I've always put that in my LinkedIn profile, that I'm here to be a catalyst for change. And then when I found out that that's what it is as a 5 line, I'm like, well, there it is. So we see the 5 line in these profiles, 2-5, 3-5, 5-1, and 5-2. In this class, Megan, you and I could have some interesting conversations, and Leslie, about what it means to be a 5 line. So if you can stay around in a couple minutes, we will have that conversation. Otherwise, let's move on to the 6 line, which is the leader or role model. Now this says leader. I don't want you to be misled. We're all here to lead by example. So the 6 lines are not the only leaders. It's just a different type of leader. But 6 lines are here to lead particularly by example because they are role models. And the reason for that is they've really been there and done that. All my 6 line clients have had very interesting lives, Usually it's a very clear delineation. It's almost like they've had 3 different lives. You've heard of cats having 9 lives. My 6 lines usually have 3 distinct lives, 0 to 30, 30 to 50, and then 50 plus. What is the purpose and function of that? Well, it's so that they can have been there and done that on everything by the time they're 50, so that they can be a role model and they can help guide other people and be a teacher who shares wisdom from their own life experience. Again, leading by example. And they can tend to be detached, mystical maybe, and have a very high perspective of life, like kind of from a high mountain. And the reason is that for that is because they have been there, done that. They've experienced a lot of things. And like, oh yeah, no, I totally remember when I was this or when I was that, I did this. And, you know, so they have that perspective because of their life experience. So that's really interesting to know about the role models, the leaders, and they can have a fear underlying of failing the mission because they don't want to fail. And they know that they're here to kind of be a leader and do this thing, you know, be a role model, and they don't want to fail. So that fear can drive them and motivate them to do certain things that otherwise they probably wouldn't be and do. So we see the 6 line in 3-6, 4-6, 6-2, and 6-3. And so in this class, that's you, Clara, you, Daniel, and yeah, just the 2 of you. So we can hear about your perspective here in just a minute. So we're just at time. So I want to just remind you that there is no one size fits all, and that we are all different, and that the point of these profiles is literally to help us to play a role that's in alignment with our particular design. So that is where we're at. We've covered the 6 lines, which make up the 12 profiles. And we've talked about how the first line is your primary and the second line is what would call you out. So coming back to your question, Lynette, as a 2-4, you are here to be a hermit. That's your 2 line, and your 4 line is what's going to call you out of your cave. And I'm having lived with you, I've seen this many, many times. You're busy, you're doing your work, you're doing your thing, and then you'll get a phone call. Oh, Lynette, we want you to come and do this thing, or how about we go to a movie, or we go do this thing, and you're like, yeah, of course, let's go. And that's how it works. So that is what your public role is meant to be in alignment with that, to be called out by those people, in your case, who you have something to respond to, in this case, a phone call or a text or something that says, hey, come and do this thing. You check in with your inner guidance system. For you, it's your emotions, but you also have access to your gut as a generator. And so you know, does it feel right to you? If it does, great. If it doesn't, you say, no, not this time. Let's do it some other time. So that's the shorter answer to your question. We can certainly talk more about that afterwards. I'm noticing all the comments. So get your question ready. If you can stay a little bit longer, we're going to start going through the questions.
I have to jump, but thank you so much for all the information.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks, Clara. Thanks, Lynette. Yeah, if you need to go ahead and jump now. If you have a few minutes to stay extra and to hear more, to discuss your particular numbers, you know, and what have any questions about it, then I would be happy to answer that. I'm just skimming through the other questions. Let's see, interested in the video. Okay, Clara, I'll be happy to send that. Yeah, and I can send out the replay to you guys who have joined. Okay, so we've got a little bit of time for Q&A. I see that we still have, let's see, Amira, Daniel, Megan, Liz, Rusty, Abigail, and Leslie. So who's first? Who would like to ask the first question? We've got about, well, let's just see, probably about 15 minutes. Let's see how it goes.
I'll go.
Go ahead.
Just a quick question. So as you were reading those, and you know, potentially Libra Moon, Venus and Gemini, I don't know. But I definitely feel like I have so many of those. I mean, I really, when you were reading them, I was like, is it like astrology where we each all have some of that somewhere in your chart? But no, for me, one of the reasons I was attracted to you and human design is because that duality hopefully will be funneled down. And as multidimensional humans or whatever in this new paradigm, yes, we're all of everything in a quantum way, but I'm hoping to stop the, like, yes, it's vast, but in human design, and maybe I thought perhaps I heard you say that you didn't really realize that you were the hermit until you were given the hall pass again to like return to your being of where how you incarnated before you wanted love and you people pleased to get it, you know? So in human design, have you found that to be true, that it kind of takes a hot minute for you to sink into the depths of the design and
Absolutely.
own it? Okay.
Yes. No, I'm glad you brought that up, Abigail. It's a great point. And a lot of people say that to me, especially when they're first learning their chart, like, yeah, this doesn't resonate with me. I just don't think this is me. So, you know, having had that experience myself, I totally get it. And it's true. It does. Here's the bottom line. We all have a lot of conditioning and programming. I'm going to share on my screen, if I can find it quickly. What I mean, where the conditioning and programming lives, so that you can see what. Okay, so here's a chart. Can you see that? Do you guys see the chart? Okay.
Well, wait,
so
hold on.
Do you see a chart here?
Yes, I do. Okay, it's in the background. Sorry.
Okay, and it says your quantum business and career design blueprint. Yes.
I have something funky on mine. I don't know what it is, but everyone else is probably fine.
Does anybody else see that? I just want to make sure the right screen is showing. Do you guys see your quantum business and career design blueprint?
No.
No? Oh, shoot. Okay. Let me
No.
try it one more time. Hold on. Here we go. Okay, I think it must be.
It's saying it's trying to open PowerPoint.
Okay.
Like we're seeing your error.
You're seeing what? Oh, you're seeing the error. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know, okay, here it is. It's just a different screen. Let me just show you. Okay, this slide. This isn't the slide. This is just a slide to show you an example. Whoops.
Okay.
Where is it? Well, maybe I should forget this. Here we go. Let's look at this one. This one will work. Okay. Do you see my chart on there? Whoops, shoot. What's happening here? It says Grace at the top. Yes. How to read your chart?
I see how to read your chart, but not Grace. Oh, wait.
Okay.
Yeah, I see it.
Here it is on the right. So I just want to give you an example. So when you look at your own chart, what you notice is there's a lot of color. And for most of you, there's a lot of color. Some of you don't have any color. Actually, Mira has a lot of white openness, for instance. So the openness is where your conditioning and programming lives. When I say that, what I mean by that is the colored parts of your chart are what you're consistently broadcasting to the world, and you're here to master that energy. Why do I say master it? Because it means that you're going to have consistent energy. You're going to have consistent access to that particular energy all the time. So you have the opportunity to fine tune it, but to master it, because that is what's true for you all the time. However, the parts that are white in it are the parts that are what we call it's where your conditioning and programming is. It's the parts that represent these energetic antenna that you have. That's like, the function of those is to bring in information. So in the white areas of your chart, that's where you're receiving information. You're like a screen door. And then the colored parts, you're like, think of it as a glass door with a colored light behind it. You're broadcasting to everybody else. But with the white parts, it's like a giant screen door. And so you're bringing in the information of whatever is around you. But it's not just whatever's around you in the moment. It's whatever you've been conditioned and programmed with for good chunks of your life. So for example, when you're a kid, you have parents usually or somebody around you, and whatever their chart is, whatever they're broadcasting, you're receiving it. And this is what we call conditioning. This is one example of what we call conditioning and programming. So for instance, in my chart here, I have an open G center. That's the middle one here, and an open will center. So this means that I'm open to conditioning and programming. I've got this screen door. So if somebody has colored smoke, I'll say, coming in to me, my screen door can get colored in whatever color that smoke is. And I might think that my screen door is now pink because I'm seeing all this pink smoke, that's now coloring my screen door. But it's not actually me. It's actually somebody else's energy. So my point is this is where you can think that you're one thing and it might not actually be truly you. And so as you go through what Ra, the founder of human design, calls the deconditioning process, which takes really 7 years from the time you start to live in alignment with your strategy and your authority. That is when you start to it's like you're pulling off all this garbage that's been in the drain, you know, like clogging the drain, you're like pulling it out, and now the water can flow. You know, when I say the water can flow, it's like your energy, how you're designed to flow, can actually start to flow now. And before that, it's been blocked up by all this stuff that people have thrown in the sink. It's a different analogy. I hope it's not confusing, but the point is, we are all of the chart. To answer your question, Abigail, we all have aspects of all of it. So, you know, just for instance, since I'm not a one line, that doesn't mean I don't like to research, but it means that primarily I'm here to be, my public role is to be a hermit. I'm meant to just do my own thing in my cave, in my house, wherever it is. And then I get called out by my 5 line. So that's when I'm meant to share in response, because I'm a generator type. So I'm waiting for something to respond to. If you're a projector, you're waiting for the invitation. If you're a manifestor, you're waiting for right timing. If you're a reflector, you're waiting for the full moon cycle so that you can get clarity.
What about manifesting generator?
Yeah, we're generator type. So we're waiting for something to respond to.
So even though it's a manifesting generator, it's still generator.
Yep. So for instance, you, Abigail, you're waiting for, just like Lynette, everything I said about Lynette, her business and being called out by her 4 line, her social network, that applies perfectly to you. So you're primarily meant as a 1/4 manifesting generator to be an investigator. So you're just kind of doing your research, you're digging in, you're doing that most of the time until somebody says, hey, Abigail, let's go do this thing, or let's go to the movies, or let's go out to lunch or whatever. And you're like, yeah, let's go. You listen to your gut says yes, and you go. If your gut says no, you don't go. But that's how it works. Does that make sense?
Very much so. And then the one thing you said, you have an open middle heart or something. It looks like heart, I guess. I don't know what. So my top 2 are both clear.
These
yours
2?
are yellow. Yes.
Yeah.
So maybe that's so permeable.
Yeah, well, it is. And we could have, a lot more detailed conversation about what that means. I mean, for instance, if your top 2 are open here, it means you can read minds. You have the capacity to read minds, which is pretty amazing. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you know how to right this minute. It means you have the capacity to do it. And when you focus on that and you hone that skill set, you can develop it and you can become very adept at it. You have the capacity to do it very easily. It doesn't mean that because mine is colored in that I can't necessarily do that. It just means I'm going to have to rely on other senses to kind of pick up information and maybe get to the same sort of place, but in a different way, because we're just all different. So
cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for that question. Great question. Okay, Danielle, I see you. Do you have a question?
Not really, Grace. Thank you for your time. It was great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Did you learn something that was useful to you today?
Yeah, sure. Like, line 3, 6, first 29 years, 3, lot of experience. And for sure now is a different life. Seems to be a different life now.
And how old
I'm
are you now?
31 and since 2 years ago. Sorry, say again.
You said you're 31 now?
Yes, 31 now.
A whole nother life ready for you now.
Yeah, just another life. Yeah.
Perfect.
So
yeah,
it's much quieter, much easier. Like,
yes, good.
Not much going on anymore,
Yeah.
So that's.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's
Good.
it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Danielle. Look, I appreciate that. Hey, Rusty, I see that you have your hand raised.
Thank you.
Sorry, did you have anything more, Danielle?
If I get to.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Rusty.
So you were saying that the first number and the second number, how they're related. And I'm wondering how you would say that for the 1 and the 3. How does the 3 call me out, call my 1 out? Do you see my question?
Yeah, that's a great question. So how I would do this is for you. And notice that I'm asking Rusty's a manifester. So the way that we ask questions of the open sacral beings is different than the way we ask questions of the generator type. So the majority are generators, and if you know and love a generator, you're going to want to ask them a yes or no question. You're going to want to ask yourself a yes or no question. But for people like Rusty who are open sacrals, we want to ask them open-ended questions. So I would ask you, Rusty, to, I would ask you the question, how do you see that playing out in your life? How does the explorer part of you call out your investigator, your researcher aspect?
So like, would I invite her on a trip to go discover some, it's, you know what I mean? Like, would it be something like that? Would someone else pull it out as the three?
Well, not necessarily. It might be. It could happen in any number of ways. But for her, and I think she was just about to say something. Were you about to answer that, Rusty?
No, I was just trying to understand what an open-ended question is versus yes or no, and I was feeling very in tune with that. That's all.
Oh, okay.
Hearing what you're saying.
So an open-ended question would be a what or a how, or
Right.
a when or where. It's like not a yes or no. It's like giving you an opportunity to, because see what happens is if I ask you a yes or no question, I'm forcing you into your sacral, and it's in your not self theme, and it's out of alignment for you. So
yes,
you feel that, yes?
Yes, thanks. Yes.
Sure. Well, to answer your question a little bit more thoroughly, here's one way that I imagine that would happen, but I would invite you into an inquiry to really start focusing on that, Rusty, so that you can see how it works in your own life. But here's how I would imagine that happening. So for instance, you are a researcher. I know about you that you really have a lot of in-depth knowledge about certain aspects of health, and you've had to overcome your own health challenges. So you've had to dig really deep to try to understand why and how and what, certain things work in terms of physical health, right? And so as you dig into that, that could be your primary focus. I know from talking to you that has been your primary focus for much of your life, is digging in to try to find the answers for your own journey. But what has called you out of that, in my knowledge of you, is trips. You're like, oh, I want to take a trip. I want to go outside of Austin. I'm sick of Austin. I want to go to Portland. I want to go to somewhere else. So that's exploring. So that exploring can give you a break from your normal, deep dive into your own, whatever it is that you're researching in the moment, because you want to go explore another city or another place. That's what I see in you. How does that feel to you?
Totally. Yes, that totally makes sense now that you're saying that. And I'm understanding why some people feel naked in front of you. And as you know, because of my chart, I'm okay with being naked, whatever.
Yeah, Rusty's a 3-line, one of those 3 lines I talked about. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rusty. I appreciate your feedback.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, I see. Let's see. I saw your question, Rusty. I'm looking in the chat. Leslie says, I used to make myself wrong for not always following through with my curiosities, but after learning about the 3 profile energy, I understand I'm meant to be here to model success and failures. Yeah, absolutely. You're here to show people what works and what doesn't, Leslie. And so let's see, I'm looking you up as a 3-5 manifesting generator. Yeah, you're going to be doing that on steroids. Like, you're going to be doing stuff and finding out a lot of things and moving fast, probably. So that is, yeah, modeling success and failures. Absolutely. That's true. Anyone else have any questions?
All good. Thank you. Thank you. And I love that you literally on a dime implemented her knowledge, your knowledge into your open-ended question again. That's amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate the acknowledgement. Well, and so I'm glad you brought that up. So this is an example of how do we integrate this knowledge and information into our lives. So what Rob called it is the experiment. Human design, Human design is not an experiment because we don't think it's true or relevant, but it's an experiment because it doesn't matter what I or anyone else tells you. It has to work for you. You have to put it into your own life and experiment with it. And so for me, just knowing that information, how to ask open-ended questions or close-ended questions, yes or no, has made all the difference in helping me to communicate better with others. There was somebody else that had a question about how to communicate, and I didn't write that down, but how to communicate better. But that's a big part of it. That's one that's a one little nugget that can make a huge difference when you're talking to your kids, your friends, your partners, your colleagues, whatever. Just knowing that, if you understand their chart, it's not like you have to be an expert at human design, but just knowing if they're a generator type or not can help you to communicate better with them.
One final question too, just because I have, a huge data pool, because I've done all my friends' charts and just whatever astrology charts, do that for free to help people on their path, which a lot of people in my world have had what you had happen about 4 years ago, similar, including me. So not the same, but equally catapulting into just different, but yeah, the time. So with Vedic, it's super, I'm just wondering, like, the time of birth, is it that specific with human design where if it's 8 minutes off or 15 or they don't know, are they still able to, like, can you rectify it?
Yeah.
And if that's a level 2 question, I'll tell you.
Say it again. It's a level 2 question.
If that takes too long to answer, I can email you, no problem.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can answer. I don't see anyone else with their hand raised, so I'm going to go ahead and answer. I think Leslie or somebody else had that question at the beginning, and I meant to come back to it. So let's go ahead and dive in. So your birth time,
cool.
How important is it? It's pretty important, but if you don't know what it is, there are ways that you can get it, or you can get something that's going to help you. So for instance, if I have a client that doesn't know their birth time, I always ask, is there anybody that you can find out from? Like, first of all, do you have a birth record? Certificate. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Danielle. Appreciate it. Have a good day. Yeah, if you have a birth certificate, obviously, and some people don't even think of asking that question. So that's the first level, like, just, do I have a birth certificate? Yes or no. Oh, wait, I do have one. I can go ask so-and-so, or I can go to the birth records thing and order one. It costs $26, but maybe it's worth it. Yeah, it is worth it. Go get it. If you can't, or if in the hospital that you were born, or the place you were born, like I watched 3 of my siblings be born at home. So the birth time was a little bit, like, exactly when it was. My mom had to go back to the baby books, and she wrote letters to us when we were born, and those were in the baby book. So we had to go back to the baby books and look that up. I mentioned that just because I want you to open your mind to how to get this information. You could potentially ask somebody who might have been at the birth, around the birth, at least to find out, was I born in the morning, afternoon, evening, like, just get an idea. And that can help, because once you have an idea, then what you can do is you can run charts every 2 hours to see, and there's only like 12 charts you can run in a 24-hour period, right? To see if it changes much. And in most cases, it's not going to change that much. I mean, sometimes it does change a lot. So, but it just depends. But that's the first thing that you can do. And then the second thing you can do is, there are ways that you can discern things. Like, I used to use a pendulum, and now I just focus on muscle testing. So there are ways that you can check that way. I mean, is it 100%? No. Does it depend on the person and their guidance system? Yes. I mean, there's a lot of variables there, but that is a factor. And then the final thing, the most sure way to find out, that I understand, that my human design teacher recommends, is to find a Vedic astrologer. And the Vedic astrologers have a way, and I don't know what that is, but it usually costs some money, so unless you're willing to invest in a session with a Vedic astrologer, and like I said, I don't know how much it is, that would be the other way. But that's really the summary version of what I've come to. Does that help, Abigail?
Yeah. So it is important. And yes, you can find it, just different modalities.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for asking. Okay, any other questions? I'm looking in the chat.
Thank you so much. You're amazing.
And
nice to she seems fun.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, thank you so much. Does anybody else have any questions? If not, we will close. If you have a question, I'm happy to do one more.
Me?
Go ahead, Rusty. Yeah.
Okay. When you were talking about the 5 line, which I think you were saying you are, you were talking about something about the energy. When it's done, and then you led into talking about, it's oftentimes we get let go of jobs. Can you repeat that again? Do you remember?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me share the slide on that one so that people have a reference point. Yeah. So what I was talking about was the 5 line, and we were talking about the general in times of trouble. Do you see the 5 line on the screen?
I do, thanks, yes.
Perfect, okay, good. Just want to make sure the right slide's showing up. So general in times of trouble is specifically what I was referring to when I talked about that. What it means is the 5 line is here to literally be it like a general in the military, to get the right people in the right place. You do this, you do this, you do this. Let's do this. Let's have this strategy. Like, let's go. So that's what I mean by general in times of trouble. The way that it played out for me, and it can play out different ways and for different people. The way it played out for me is I've been a change manager for corporate change projects. So my role was to literally create the strategy, work with the leaders, work with all the stakeholders, and put together not only a strategy, but a plan for how to get from here to there. I mean, that's what a general does, like, except in military terms. So that's what I mean. There's another example that my niece told me. She said, oh, that's like when my sister called me and asked me to bring to come pee in a parking lot and to bring a bra. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She said, yeah, my sister was trying to take a drug test and she knew she couldn't pass it. So she asked me to come and pee in the cup for her. And then, by the way, she didn't have a bra. And so she asked me to borrow my bra. And so there she was going to a parking lot to pee in a cup and give her bra to her sister. So that's a funny example, but another way that she was playing that role of general in time of trouble for her sister was in trouble in this situation, and she was called to be the general to help her get out of that situation. So it can happen in many ways, but that is what I was referring to. Does that answer? How does that answer? How is that answer in terms of what you were wondering, Rusty?
Thank you. Thank you. That did help me understand. Thanks. Yes.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Awesome. Well, I could talk to you guys for hours. You know, I love talking about this stuff, but I also want to be respectful of your time. So if we don't have any other questions, I think, oh, you know what, I should do a little pitch. So if anybody's interested in working with me, I do have a group coaching program coming up in January. I haven't announced this before, but I know I've talked to you about it, Rusty, before. I'm gonna do the Abundant Life by Design program, which is basically the 10-week personal transformation program that I've worked one-on-one with my clients to do. And I've never done it in a group context. So I'm going to make videos, there will be homework, and then there'll be a live Q&A call once a week. So that's what we have talked about. The part that's new that I've just decided in the last 48 hours to do is a human design sex program, where we're going to look at your design as it relates to your sexuality. And so it's going to be more of a looking at the basics of your chart, like really understanding who you are, but looking through the lens of sexuality. So how does that play out in the bedroom? How does it play out in your relationships? Not just with others, but your relationship with yourself. So we're going to look at a lot of the same information that I'll be looking at in my other program. We're going to look at, deep dive into your profile and into your type and into, all the same kind of stuff, but it's just through the lens of sexuality and intimacy. Why am I doing this? Because my purpose here is across the Sleeping Phoenix. One of the 4 codes that I am here to the themes in my life includes sex and intimacy. It's one of my 4 key codes. Those key codes for you, if you're not familiar with them, are in your incarnation cross on your chart. There's 4 numbers in parentheses, and those are the 4 codes that are going to be prevalent in your life, and they indicate a big part of what you're here to be and do. It makes up actually 70% of what you're here to be and do. But those are codes that can only be unlocked once you are living your strategy and your authority. So your strategy is understanding your type and how do you interact with others, whether you're like for you, Rusty, you need to inform. You're here to inform first and then take action. For me, I'm here to wait for something to respond to. Anyway, all that to say, there will be 2 group coaching programs that I'm going to be doing simultaneously. So a lot of the same information, but through 2 different lenses. One is focusing on kind of your career and how to have an abundant life, like literally abundance, however you define it. And the other one will be a lot of the same information, but through the lens of sexuality, intimacy, and relationships. So if you're interested in that, I just bought the domain, Human Design Sex. I haven't set it up yet, but I will be having information on that soon. And so if you're interested in that group coaching program, let me know and I will send you information, as we'll probably have a survey to start with it. Any questions or comments about that? Go ahead, Rusty.
Can we be interested in both, or are we choosing one?
Yeah, you can totally be interested in both. Yeah, absolutely. And then if you want to have a one-on-one reading with me, that's also another option. You can go to askgrace.info, and you will be able to schedule a chart reading with me. I do a deep dive into your chart. Usually it's 2 1-hour sessions, and we look at your chart. Like, what does your chart say about who you are? I have another package that's similar. It's called Activate Your Life Purpose. And that's where in the first hour, we do a deep dive in your chart. And then the second hour, we look at those 4 codes. And those 4 codes, like I said, make up 70% of what you're here to be and do. So if you're looking for clarity in your life, that is a beautiful package that right now is 50% off. It's only $250 for those 2 hours until if you book it before the end of the year. And I don't have many spots open between now and the end of the year. It doesn't have to happen before the end of the year. It just needs to be booked before the end of the year, because I'm about to take a trip. So I'll be on the road. And so my calendar is already blocked for a lot of the time between now and the end of the year. But if you want to book something for January, I'll be back. I'll be back soon, and we can talk then. So that's yeah, I'm not trying to sell you anything per se, other than I want to give you opportunities to learn about yourself in ways that resonate with you. If it's a group coaching program, if it's a one-on-one, whatever works for you, that's what I want to help you do. If it's not me, maybe it's another teacher resource. I just want you to learn about you, because my goal, as some of you know, is the Know Yourself Revolution. By 2025, 5 million people, maybe 5 billion people, wouldn't that be great? If 5 million people were living in alignment with their design, and were listening to their own internal guidance system, and instead of living someone else's life, instead of doing what other people are telling them to do, living according to their heart, wouldn't that be an amazing world that we would be living in? I know it would be, and I invite you to be part of it. You can do that in your own way, whatever resonates with you. I'm not here to push, sell anything unless it resonates with you and you want to work with me. I'm happy to do that. So that's it. No hardcore sell, just opportunities. If you have any questions, let me know. And if you want me to send you any of the videos that we've talked about, how to create an abundant life, my 4-step manifestation process, I have that on my YouTube channel. I'm happy to send you the link. Just put the question in the chat. Or if you want information about either the group coaching programs or the one-on-one, just put it in the chat, and I will follow up with you as soon as we're done with the class. Thank you again for your time. Any other final questions? Okay, I'm going to say goodbye. Have a great day. Thanks, you guys. Thanks for your time. It was great to connect.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Grace.